Thank you everyone for joining us for today's webinar, The Great Resignation and How You Can Use Digital Credentials to Attract and Retain. My name is Cody, I'm from Accredible, and I'll be your host for today. If you're not familiar with us, we are the world's leading digital certificate and digital badging software. Over 1,500 leading organizations like Google, Slack, Sage, S&P Global, Skillsoft, and quite a few more trust us to issue their digital badges and certificates, and we issue millions of credentials each month. If you have any questions for us, please post those in the Q&A window, and that's accessible in the panel on either the side or bottom of your screen. I'll be monitoring those questions as we go, and if we don't get to one of your questions right away, don't worry. We'll take some time near the end of this webinar to answer as many of your questions as we can. Please note that we are recording this webinar and we will send out the recording to you after this webinar is over. So, many professionals see the Great Resignation as an opportunity for a career reboot. They're feeling burned out in their current professions and are concerned about the loss of flexibility that they gained during the pandemic. As a result, people are taking inventory of their skill sets and looking for pathways into new roles, such as training and short-term credentials, and maybe in the market for your learning programs. This webinar is going to help you better understand how to take advantage of this trend to grow your own credentialing programs. Let's start by exploring the topic of the Great Resignation itself, right? The Great Resignation is an advancing trend where workers are voluntarily leaving their jobs in the millions each month. Although it's typically spoken about in the context of the US, the Great Resignation is taking place all around the globe. So, what is influencing the Great Resignation? People aren't just leaving their jobs for the hope of something similar. Sometimes they are exploring a complete career change in response to a lack of job satisfaction, poor employer response to the pandemic, and wage stagnation. There are millions of professionals that are reevaluating their priorities, and now we are seeing them take action. They want careers that ensure a decent work-life balance, opportunities for personal development, and a proper living wage. And to get this, they know they need to assess and improve their skills portfolio. In a survey by the Pew Research firm from January of 2021, 1/3 of their 10,000 respondents already started taking courses and training to achieve this. And that's back in January. When we say employees are leaving their current positions, it's not a small number. Since January, the number of employees resigning each month has steadily increased and actually reached a frankly astounding 4.4 million Americans that are reported to have resigned in September. And hospitality, retail, and other in-person customer-facing roles have seen the highest number of resignations. So why resign? Many professionals complain of not feeling engaged at work, particularly Gen Z and millennial age groups. 59% of Gen Z workers reported a dissatisfaction with their job, and millennial employees had the highest rate of resignation between 2020 and 2021. They accounted for 55% of all career changers. This demographic is placing a greater importance on wanting to work where their talents and efforts are appreciated. They want to have internal support to grow professionally. And this is directly influencing their redefinition of career goals and seeing millions of professionals embrace career development and upskilling to open up new opportunities for themselves. What does that mean? Career advancement and career change is top of mind for many professionals. They want opportunities to enable career mobility, and they don't have time to wait for a 4-year degree. This has created a demand spike for short-term programs and massive open online courses, also referred to as MOOCs, compared to the pre-pandemic era. Let's visualize that spike. 1/3 of the learners that ever registered on a MOOC platform joined in 2020. That's 60 million new learners combined across learning providers, and the total number of active learners reached 180 million by the end of 2020. And that's just last year. Our own data also supports a rapid uptake of career advancing credentials. In Q1 of 2020, over 700 issuers were delivering an average of 440,000 credentials each month. Jump to Q1 of 2021, and those metrics had increased to over 1,300 issuers delivering an average of 1.2 million credentials each month. So issuers doubled, credentials issued tripled. This reflects the projected growth of the e-learning market to grow to be $325 billion by 2025. And because this is only a projection that's taken place in the past, the impact of the Great Resignation could potentially and probably will lead to the true value of the market surpassing these expectations. In a 2021 PwC Workforce of the Future report, out of 32,500 professionals surveyed, 77% stated a willingness to upskill and reskill in order to remain employable. And that was an increase over the previous year. Extended to the global workforce, that equates to around 2.5 billion candidates ready to seek credentials. That's a huge pool of potential customers that can be targeted by any professional development certification, and an opportunity that professional certification and product trainers in particular need to seize so that they don't fall behind. So people are resigning and they're looking to develop and reskill themselves to find a better career opportunity. What kinds of credentials are those learners looking for? According to Indeed, one of the world's top job sites, the top 10 certifications in demand by employees are project management, business analysis, supply chain and logistics, marketing, skilled trade, human resources, sales, accounting, computer networking, and healthcare. Chances are one of those topics resonates with you, whether you offer it now or have been considering it as an option. And these certifications are projected to continue growing in popularity as learners aim to move into more secure industries. So here's one of the most important questions in this webinar. How and where do learners begin investigating credentials that are going to lead them to successfully upskill and become more marketable? Not shocking. Industry peers and colleagues have a big influence on purchase decisions around any career advancing credentials. Professionals are looking at their peers that have already earned credentials to identify which credentials are likely to bring them success. This has been made even easier with the thorough integration of LinkedIn and other forms of social media into our daily lives, and it creates a knock-on effect for credential demand. How does that work? Well, people are keen to brag about their achievements on social media, especially the achievements that lead to career development. That, in turn, fuels interest from their network in specific credentials showcased by these individuals. And that unleashes a powerful copycat effect that sparks demand for those credentials. So why is social media so important? Social media platforms are the fastest growing communication tools online. Kepius analysis showed that there are 4.5 billion social media users globally as of October 2021. And that equates to about 58% of the total global population. Over the past year alone, social media has seen tremendous growth, an average of 13 new users every single second. Additionally, the main user base on LinkedIn's professional social network are between the ages of 24 and 35. That same age group is the one we talked about previously that made up 55% of career changers in 2020. So the majority of social users are the same people looking to reskill and upskill. Issuers that fail to utilize social media as part of their credentialing strategy are missing a huge opportunity to engage their target audience and their recipients' networks through authentic social shares. So, where do digital credentials come in? Typically, certifications are represented by physical certificates or more recently PDF certificates, but there's a key downside to traditional credentials, a lack of shareability. Without a simple way to share, credential issuers miss out on free marketing their programs in the places that career changers are spending most of their time, social media. Digital credentials, on the other hand, are designed and intended to be shared. When someone meets the criteria an issuer sets, they're going to instantly receive their credentials and then share their achievement in the moment to their social media feeds to celebrate. As the number of candidates looking to change careers continues to grow, so does the demand for credentials they can immediately showcase to improve their employability prospects. The result for issuers is twofold. They gain increased visibility for their brand and programs, and the increased visibility comes from individuals that are part of their target audience. This greatly increases the chance for further enrollments, all without spending a cent on additional marketing. What does that look like in practice? In a recent case study with Brunchwork, they're a leading provider of modern business education. They decided to launch digital credentials after a customer poll revealed a previously unseen demand for digital certificates. And after they launched, they received a 78% increase in monthly LinkedIn page views because their recipients were sharing their new achievement to their professional profiles. Industry peers and colleagues saw the shared credentials and the subsequent success of those that earned that Brunchwork certificate, and it inspired them to also pursue training. And what impact does this have for issuer growth? In a case study with Scality, they made the switch to digital credentials to eliminate a lag time of 30 days between recipients completing the course and potentially receiving a paper credential. Not only did this help to convey the professionalism of the certification, Scality also benefited from increased visibility of their programs. 72% of their recipients engage with their credentials, whether that's sharing socially or adding certificates to LinkedIn profiles or something similar. The increased visibility enabled by Scality allowed them to Scality scaled from 300 to 1,200 students with no additional workload created. And that's something that deserves mention here, scaling and workload. If you want to take on more learners and benefit from the Great Resignation, you need to be ready for a 400% increase in your number of recipients. And you can do that with the digital credentials. So arguably the most important part of capitalizing on the shareability of digital credentials is the benefit of authentic user-generated marketing. This type of marketing, which is often referred to as the most difficult, resonates better with social audiences than both influencer generated marketing and brand generated social content. 79% of consumers report that user generated content on social media significantly impacts their purchasing habits. So, to recap, what do issuers need to capitalize on the impact of the Great Resignation? They need to make learning accessible to candidates by offering short-term courses and programs that can be achieved around work-life responsibilities. They need to take advantage of social media platforms for increased visibility, as that is where the largest demographic of career changers are spending most of their time. And finally, they need to better utilize the technology available, like digital credentials, to harness the reach of their recipients and benefit from user-generated marketing that showcases their brand, their credentials. Especially as we've shown, those looking for career development opportunities respond better to seeing the celebrated success of their peers and colleagues than anything else. All right. That is a lot of information. So hopefully that has gotten your brain going. You have some questions that you want to ask. We'll open things up to questions now. If you do have something that you haven't put into our Q&A window, please post it now. I'll try to get to as many of your questions as possible here. And I do apologize in advance for paraphrasing any of your questions as we go along. Okay. The first question I have here is a good one. How do we keep our own staff in the Great Resignation? We spent most of the webinar talking about how many people are looking and why people are looking. I think a great thing to throw in here is that, and forgive me if I'm misquoting, I think 70% of employees would consider leaving their current job to work for an organization that's been known to invest in employee development and learning. So 70% of people want to leave and work for some place that's actually investing in their own employees. And realistically, I think it only takes like a 20% pay raise to poach that somebody that's even engaged. So what can you do to keep your own staff? Obviously, learning and development is key. Providing opportunities, whether they are your own internal programs or offering them something that offers a digital credential like an Accredible provider, is, I think, paramount to making sure that your employees feel engaged and like they are getting the professional development that they need. And if you are wondering about what kinds of training programs are out there, I highly recommend a product that we have called coursefinder.io that'll allow you to look through based on skills tags to see what other Accredible customers are offering that you could potentially provide to your own employees. All right, the next question that I have here, and I apologize again for paraphrasing, is will the resignation trend continue? We are not prophets, but we can see data. And what that's telling us is the wave is still cresting. We haven't even reached the peak based on the number of monthly resignations that we're seeing. And we'll probably continue to see that through the end of the year. There's always a trend, right, of people looking for new opportunities around the end of the year. So if you want to take advantage of those people that are at the end of the year realizing they want to upskill or reskill, that's something that's pretty time bound. You want to get on that quickly. So yes, we think it's going to continue. Yes, we think there are going to be more people resigning over the next few months, especially looking for ways to reskill, ways to upskill. And I think an important point to note here is that Accredible is pretty fantastic. I'm going to brag about our team for a second at getting you set up as an issuer and getting your programs ready to launch. So if that comment I made about the increasing wave before the end of the year makes you worried about getting something in place, having something in place, our team is pretty well fit to get you up and running in a very short amount of time and potentially having you ready next month or even sooner to take advantage of the Great Resignation wave. Thank you for that. Sorry, I went a little off track. The next one that I have here, what have you found to be the best way to attract people to online credentials? So getting a recipient to see your credentials, getting them to accept the value of those sort of comes intrinsically with somebody understanding that they want to promote themselves. Getting them to you specifically is a question of what you are promoting and how you normally do that. We've helped a lot of issuers to create simple FAQ pages and educational pages that help their learners specifically to understand the value of digital credentials as it applies to them. And I think in doing that, in providing those educational assets, you set yourself up to then sort of launch campaigns that are going to promote your credentials themselves and the value that they have. One of the I think best examples of promotion that I heard of is something that McGraw-Hill was talking about. And I think it was around this time last year that we were talking to them. And they were tracking the people that had taken their courses and gotten their credentials, and they were doing a series of learner outcomes and publishing those. So I think that specifically showing somebody exactly what's going to happen after they get a credential, what opportunities are going to show up for them, and then marketing that to them, advertising that to them is one of the best ways you can go about attracting people to your credentials outside of everything that we already talked about, which is leveraging your existing network to show those people. And when I say leveraging the existing network, when we're talking about using digital credentials, bringing on a Credible, we're not just talking about the credential you issue tomorrow forwards. We have the ability to backdate and issue digital credentials for everybody that's been a learner and qualifies for having one. So chances are you might already have a pool of potential referral users that are just sitting there waiting to be leveraged, that you could actually get access to and issue credentials to as part of bringing on a product like Credible. All right, next question here. Do you have research supporting students looking for online certification versus in-class training? So online versus in-person. It's a great question. I think the general trend towards digital education is key. Brunchwork, the company that we were talking about before that does professional training, one thing that we didn't mention as part of their story is that during the pandemic, most of their competitors went underwater because they did not transition to online learning fast enough. So that, I think, at its core, tells us everything that we know about whether or not people want easily accessible training and stuff that's going to be available to them no matter their geo region versus in-class training. Do people still like getting digital certificates for in-person training? Yes. And people generally share those as well. But if the question is around whether or not students are looking for online classes, the answer is unequivocally yes. People want accessibility. They want to be able to take a course without needing to drive to their local metro area and do that. Okay, next question here. What about soft skills versus hard skills credentials? I think that in some ways depends on the learner that you're talking to, but for the purpose of employability, learners tend to trend towards hard skill credentials. So something like a product and professional training certificate is going to be more valuable inside of a job search than a soft skill certificate might. Both are important, but I think one has sort of more applicable value in the eye of the learner than the other. So I think that's a great question to dive into. And I won't do it now because it is a little outside of the scope of this webinar to have that sort of discussion. But thank you, Toby, for sending that through. That sort of question about soft skills versus hard skills is one that every issuer should be asking themselves. And if you feel like you are not providing something that people are going to want or people are going to look for, you have the ability to bring that into your repertoire. And I'll talk about Credible a little bit more here and say that when it comes to the way in which you issue credentials, it doesn't need to be one thing with us. We have different groups and different stacked credentials that you can use to expand your offering. If you do want to, let's say, add in another offering to meet a hard skill credential requirement that a learner might have. All right. I am not seeing too many other questions here. So for the rest of the questions, they are a little bit outside the scope of this webinar. If you do have a question we didn't get to, someone on our team is going to reach out to you right after this webinar is over to address that for you. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us today. Remember, You can get in touch with our team, our experts, at any time from our website. That's accredible.com. And you can sign up for a trial account from there, and that'll give you everything that you need to test out Accredible. I highly recommend, if this is something that you haven't looked at before, take a look before the end of the year, and we can help you get that set up and you can benefit from it before the end of the year. All right, we've helped out when it comes to that hundreds of organizations. That includes Google and Slack and Sailor Academy and Skillsoft and dozens of others. We've helped them to grow their programs. So I'm confident that we can help you. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us, and have a great day.